But
so on that note, actually, if I fuck up and say something stupid,
yeah.
you can edit. So we can stop.
Yeah.
You can edit stuff.
Yeah, if you want to go, actually, I can't say that, then by all means let me know.
Yeah,
But make a note and make sure we don't be editing out.
Yeah, that's cool, because I tend to talk and then go, yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
Hello and welcome to the Young Performers Podcast. So what next? Now this month is going to be very exciting. It is a headshot special. So, for the next 4 episodes, you're going to be hearing some advice from 4 of the UK's leading headshot photographers. They're going to talk us through how to get the most out of your session, what to bring, etc. And if photography is something that interests you, we'll be touching on how to get into that as well. So, without further ado, photographer number 2, Robin Savage.
We can go through all that stuff.
Yeah. But actually, so how did you first start taking photos?
The same as everyone, I guess. I mean, most headshot photographers were actors or are actors, and I went to drama school. I graduated in 2000, and I had an interest in photography, and that year I worked when I graduated. Fortunately, I went straight into some theatre, and I got a camera, and was just kind of interested in kind of doing stuff, seeing how it works and stuff like that. So in the day, I'd be going out and sort of wandering around where I was and sort of doing a few photos and things, and they were obviously terrible, just awful photos and things like that. But it's like anything. It's an interest. It's a thirst. It's a kind of hobby that you start with, but then. Again, I'm sure this is the same process for most people who are actors turned headshot photographers. I thought, maybe I could do some headshots on the side to kind of make some money when I'm out of work, and it kind of started that way, really. And it was 10 years ago I started to just sort of, in fact it was longer ago than that I started just sort of doing headshots of my mates in the local park and things like that. And again, all unusable stuff, really, really terrible photos. But you learn, you sort of, the best thing to do is, what I did was look at the photo and kind of go, okay, why is that so bad? How do I make that better? And then by 2007, photography had just taken over. I'd sort of fallen out of love with acting, really. I kind of a little bit tired of going to auditions and things, but was really buzzing about doing a headshot session with actors, and I'd kind of got a lot better by that point, and so I was sort of, actually making some money from it, and people were coming to me, and it was a very clear moment. I remember being, like I say, quite pissed off with auditions and things like that, I was on holiday with my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and I just it was a very clear moment of like, I need to give up acting. That's what's kind of there's something just kind of not right in your head. And that was it. I came back from holiday and I told my agent and said, listen, I'm going to, at the tender age of 20, whatever it was, I'm going to retire from acting and do headshots full time. It's what I want to do. And I just was enjoying it so much more and getting more work, all that kind of stuff. So that was it. That was 10 years ago. And then, still going, still bothering people. So,
Awesome, sweet. So when did you start, when did you kind of, start... You'd kind of change. When was the specific point you went from taking pictures of your mates and stuff to then you started actually becoming a proper business? Was there a certain point?
I don't know, really. It's kind of organic, I think.
Yeah.
You start. You just start with your mates just to practice, really, and the actors are always happy just to kind of have their photo taken every now and again, see if they get anything good out of it at that level. So there wasn't really a specific point where it became a business. Like I say, the changeover point was that moment in 2007 of just leaving acting and focusing purely on photography, and the business just sort of grows from there. Every year you just kind of touch wood, you get busier and busier, and more people recommend you, more agents use you, and sort of things like that. So there wasn't really a specific moment when the business happened. You just suddenly find yourself busier than you were, the day before, the year before.
So do you find that, sorry, something you just mentioned there, that certain agencies tend to favour certain headshot photographers? Is that a common trend that you find?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. agents usually have a kind of, well, from my experience, have a list of photographers which they sort of will give to their clients. Some agents will be quite prescriptive and say, I'd really like you to go to one of these photographers. Some will say, well, listen, here's the people I've used before and like, but who else have you got? Who else do you know? So usually as a headshot photographer, you find yourself on certain agencies' books, as it were, on their lists. Definitely.
So this is the thing. I mentioned to you earlier. So that whole thing that when you've got like starry-eyed, the second year going into third year, he or she's starting to go through all the headshot photographers out there, or say an agent said I want you to get new headshots, and they're looking at all these different headshot photographers, and it can be quite overwhelming when you've got like dozens and dozens to pick from. How does someone start regarding like knowing which headshot photographer is right for them? Even considering like sometimes at that younger age you may not be entirely sure what your casting is, that sort of thing. That vague term, your casting. Yeah. How do you think someone should start kind of going about looking for the photographer for them?
I mean, it's a really oversaturated market now. When I sort of turned professional, should we say, 10 years ago, it was, or in fact, even when I was an actor, when I was like I said, I graduated 2000, so that 99-2000 period when we were first getting our headshots done. I mean, there was probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 main photographers who you'd go to. But these days, I mean, there's hundreds. It's with the advent of digital photography. People kind of just can pick up a camera and head down to their local bridge or whatever and start shooting some stuff. So there is you're right. It's quite a minefield and it's kind of oversaturated. I think again, if you mentioned sort of the second years, getting their first headshot session. Usually drama schools have a list of recommended photographers, and the reason why they're recommended is because they're people who've been tried and tested by the school. So they're people who will, a good headshot photographer will have the technique and the understanding and the setup to sort of get good headshots from really anybody who walks through the door. That's the kind of the mark, I think, of a professional headshot photographer, someone who's been doing it a long time. So there'll be lists of drama schools which you can access. Quite a good thing, I suppose, as well, if we're talking specifically about being at drama school, is you can look at the current third years and look at their headshots and talk to them, see who went with who had really successful sessions, who had perhaps less successful sessions for whatever reason, but also look at their headshots and see which photos are really good casting portraits of that person in the third year. And there might be a photo which really speaks to you, which you look at it and think that's the exact photo of James. That's the perfect casting photo for him. Who did your photo? So that's a good way to do as well. Talk to the guys who've been through it all already and see what and see who they went to. Do you want to talk about them when you graduate as well? If you just need new headshots, about how you can find
let's say you've got a set and
it's time for new ones.
It's time for new ones. Like how does someone know it's time for new ones? Like rather than just because sometimes an actor will feel this kind of need. I'm not getting auditions. Must be the headshots. Get new headshots. How would you say an actor can know if their headshot is wrong for them? Or?
Well, I think your hit rate for work will go down because if you're being called into auditions and your photo is out of date, it doesn't look like you, it doesn't say the right thing about you, about who you are as an actor anymore, then you're going to be kind of called in for the wrong things. So if it's probably a good indicator that your headshots are out of date if your hit rate for work's going down. But also, I mean, I always say to people, talk to other people who you trust, and really ideally somebody in the industry, someone who knows what a headshot is all about. Not your mum or something like that. Talk to someone, and they can use because you can't look at a photo of yourself objectively. It's impossible to look at a photo of yourself and see yourself the way that the rest of the world sees you. So if you can talk to somebody and say, look, what's this headshot doing for me? Is it working? Is there anything going on with it? And if they can look at it and say, well, I know you as an actor. I know your process. I know the kind of work you do and the kind of thing you do on stage. Your thing as an actor. This photo absolutely has that going on, or that photo doesn't have that going on at all. If it does have it going on, then obviously you can probably hang on to that photo for another 6 months, a year, whatever. But if there's a disconnect between who you are as an actor and your photo that you're using, and you you know that, you find that out through whatever means, then yeah, it's probably time to get new headshots.
Okay, so regarding, say, like you hear all the time, you get these kind of I personally find you can get these big sweeping generalized terms thrown around for certain types of headshot, regarding, like, a musical theatre headshot, an acting headshot. I mean, using that as an example, what is, say, would you say there's a massive difference between an empty shot and a straight acting shot, or what is your thought and opinion on all
No,
this?
I wouldn't say so. No, I mean there definitely used to be. There still is a difference in the broadest sense, but there used to be much more so when I was graduating from drama school. Actors wore a black t-shirt and looked very serious, and musical theatre people probably still wore a black t-shirt but just smiled a lot, or something like that. So that was kind of what it was like, turn of the century. But I think that my take on it is that you're an actor first, you're a performer first, and I'm sure you said you trained at MT at Central. I'm sure you know that any decent MT course will put the basis of its training in acting first, and obviously the focus is going to be on singing as well and dancing and all the kind of things. But you're an actor first, so it's about quality, the quality of the photograph, the qualities within the photograph, the casting qualities within the photograph. If you want something that's really hard hitting and gritty, or let's say something quite a kind of period look, something kind of quite softish maybe. If you've got a kind of let's say for a girl, let's say a kind of a blouse with a little bit of lace on it, and they kind of pin their hair half up, that can be a really nice period look for your Ibsens or Shakespeare or something like that. But that would also work perfectly well for something like Parade, or any kind of other legit kind of piece of musical theatre. It doesn't have to be pigeonholed as a musical theatre headshot or an acting headshot. Yes, there are still differences. I still see, let's say students from musical theatre only schools. They'll come in with their makeup might be a little bit heavier, perhaps, and will be a little bit more glam, perhaps, something like that. And that's okay. Those have their places. If you're a bit more dance based or something like that, they have their places. But my thought is that you're an actor, you're a performer. That's what your headshot needs to be about. It needs to be about who you are as an actor, and the kind of work that you want to do, the casting qualities you want to put into the session, and some of those will cross over to acting, some of those will cross over to musical theatre. And I think actually these days, talking of crossover, there is a lot more crossover. I think you'll find actors who will they'll do a play, then they'll go off and do a musical for a little while or something like that, and go back to doing some telly or theatre or something. And agencies as well these days, I think, have got more of a crossover going on. Not all agencies, of course, but my wife's agent, Hatton McHugh and Penford, to give them a plug. They're quite a good crossover agent. They've got clients who work across the board. They've got contacts across all the West End in terms of plays and musicals, or screen work as well. So I think the lines are a little bit more blurred these days.
Okay. So going back to what you said about say if you're wearing like a blouse with a bit of lace, and that would make you look a bit more period.
Yeah.
I know people always usually fret about kind of what should I bring to wear for my audition, which you can usually find on every single headshot photographer's website.
Yeah.
So rather than ask what should someone wear and what should someone bring to wear, how much do you think what you wear affects how the picture looks, and what impact it will have both short term and long term on the photo, depending on what someone wears?
I think it has a big impact. It's not the most important thing in the photograph, but it is an important thing in the photograph, certainly. You need to be thinking about the three things I say to people is what kind of actor are you, what your strengths are as an actor, and the kind of parts that you want to be going for, your casting. And you've got to bring tops that reflect that. This happened a few years ago. There was a woman who came in for a session, and she's a lovely lady, and she said she'd reached that point in her life where she wanted to be playing sort of more high status parts, sort of in the legal side of things, be it barristers or detective inspectors or that kind of stuff, things quite strong, quite high status. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right, visually looking at you, I think that's really good casting for you. And then all she'd really brought was kind of like 2 or 3 pink and green Gap t-shirts. Now that presents a bit of a problem for a headshot photographer, because how do you get that look with just those tops? So it's a big thing. and I think I would say to people, it's much better to bring much more and have too much than to not have enough, because you can usually sort of, as long as somebody's thought about what they want from the session, and they've brought tops which are going to help us get those kind of looks, you're usually fine. You've usually got everything there that you need, or you can sort of even fashion something together. So yeah, it's a big part of the picture.
Awesome. So, without giving away any kind of trade secrets or anything, I don't want to do that to you. But one thing, I had a friend ask me recently when I said I was interviewing some headshot photographers, is there anything you'd like me to ask? And they said that their main fear and struggle is getting a natural smile, which may sound, I don't know how it may sound to you, but how do you find is the best way for an actor to, because the same when they go right and they want to smile, they automatically kind of put on this kind of fake awkward little
headshot face smile.
How do you say is the best way for someone to just to get the best smile out of someone? How do you find is the most effective way?
Well, there's a couple of things to that. I think this might be a slightly waffly answer, so I
No.
apologise now. Well, do you know what? The first thing is just a nice little shortcut. Is you can actually put a little giggle into it, and I will sometimes ask people to do that. So if someone wants to go for something really bright, smiley, warm, whatever, it's about being committed to the smile and the smile having energy. And I'm sure we've all heard it a million times. It's what's happening in the eyes. It's whether it's a genuine smile or not. It's not what's happening in the mouth, but what's happening in the eyes. We probably all know that. But by putting a little chuckle to yourself, and it can feel quite weird first of all when you first do it. But by putting a little giggle or something like that, that suddenly brings commitment and life to the smile. And in a two-dimensional image, that can actually work quite well. That's the simple shortcut answer. The other one, which is where the waffle might come, it's about the way that one of the ways that I get a genuine smile from someone is it's about reactions. So what I ask people to do is to be really kind of open and committed in the session. It's kind of about trying to find a way of getting yourself to the place where you are at your most comfortable, at home by yourself with friends, family, loved ones, whatever, and not in a studio with lights and a camera in front of your face. Now that's a big ask, but it's about trying to find a way of getting as close to that point as you can, because then what I do during the session, and I don't think this is really trade secret, so I don't mind talking about it, but what I'll do in the session is talk to people a lot. So silence isn't any good. Just asking people to just kind of get on with doing whatever face they want to do is no good. I talk to people a lot and I ask them a lot of questions. The reason for that is because they're questions where I get people to think. So I'm not going to just say what's your favourite colour or what did you have for tea last night. It's a question where it's nothing too heavy, nothing too personal, but a question where I get people to think, because what happens then is that split second after the question lands, suddenly the brain is engaged, the eyes are engaged, and that's when you get some really nice headshots. When they just for a split second, they're taken away from the fact that they're having their headshots done, because they're now the thought has entirely changed in their head. And I'm not prescriptive about people. I don't say think of this, think of that. I'll ask them a question which is personal to them. I said, like I said, not too personal, but that only they'll know the answer to, and that engages them. That gets everything switched on. So that's where you get a really nice headshot. But then what I'll do is then flip that into something really irreverent or random or whatever, and it breaks that routine of that concentrated thinking. And usually, hopefully, touch wood, you get a laugh, you get a nice smile, and that's where you get those really nice genuine smiles. But I ask my clients to be really open with it. What I don't want is people to be kind of reserved and held back in a session, something like that. And I appreciate that people are nervous when they come in. I see it all the time. But that's why we sit down at the beginning of the session, like we are now, having a cup of tea and a chat, just to find out what's going on. It's a really good way of helping people relax. But yeah, it's just about getting to that place where you feel really confident, really comfortable, and if your photographer says something mildly amusing, that you laugh with it, because that's when the really good stuff happens.
Cool, awesome. So, gonna suddenly cut this into a really boring technical question, but
far away.
What is the difference really between an indoor and an outdoor shot? It treat me like a complete idiot that's never knows nothing about headshots, and they see on the website, they see studio shots, outdoor shots, and it's like, what's the difference? Sure. If someone has no idea, what is the actual difference?
That's a good question. I think I think first of all it's about putting range into the session. So what I like to do now, as I'm sure most good photographers do, is put as much range into the session as you can. Now having a setup where you can do both outdoor and indoor stuff really expands that range. Now it's a big topic. People always say, we've got to have natural light photos because that's the best. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Whatever is the best for you is the best for you. If you, let's say for example, so what I'll do is in sessions is go outside. I'll use entirely daylight in a setup. Then I'll maybe mix a little bit of flash in with it as well, just to add a slightly different dynamic. We'll come into the studio here. You can see these barn doors here open right out wide, so I can flood the studio with daylight, and that gives a specific look. I can close the barn doors right down to control the daylight, and I can close them right down and just use studio lights. Now, what that means is if for example, the difference between shooting outside entirely in daylight and then coming into the studio, no daylight at all, and using just studio light, is outside it's going to look a little bit more what you'd call natural, a little bit softer maybe. Inside, using just studio lights, I can get a much more dramatic look with much deeper shadows and things like that. Now that's relevant because it's about what you want from the photo. If you want something from the session, if you want something really hard hitting, good for like TV dramas like Happy Valley or whatever, do you know what I mean? Then we can come in the studio and we can be really creative with the lighting and do something really cool, which creates a really nice kind of shape to the face and adds that drama. So there isn't a right or wrong thing. There isn't, like, it's not like daylight is better than studio light, which is, like I say, I think from what I've heard is the kind of typical belief. It's about what's going to give you the right photos for you. And I would say when looking for a photographer, it's probably a good idea to find someone who can do both. It's not essential. There's great photographers who'll only use daylight. It's about how they use the daylight and how they make it, or how they use the light in general to make it work for you and to create the right light on that person's face. So I'd say don't get hung up about whether you're going to be outside or whether you're going to be inside or not. If you're going to a photographer for a particular reason, and that reason is most likely because you've fallen in love with their photos and their photos really speak to you, that you connect with them on whatever level, whatever it is, then it's you're probably with a good shot the fact that they're going to use the light right for you, whether that's using just one tiny little light or a whole massive setup, or just being outside under a bridge or whatever. It's not the important thing. The important thing is about getting it right for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, not awfully at all. Not. Amazing. So, if you took all of your favourite headshots that you've ever taken, all of those clients, and you could think of any kind of trait or kind of mindset that they had, maybe, if there was any similarity between all of these clients that you received your favourite headshots from, could you possibly pin down anything? That any similarity, any discernible kind of link or thing in between all of these guys? Like, what is the key for? Basically, I'm asking for what is the golden thing that any actor can walk into a headshot session. And
that's a big question, and it's a good question. I guess the thing that kind of, let's say, one of the things that ties together really successful headshots is a kind of, I suppose I'd say, enthusiasm. No, I don't mean being really, really keen and really green and coming across as kind of over-eager, that sort of thing. That's not what I mean. I think some of the biggest challenges let's flip it on its head and say some of the biggest challenges I've had to face in headshot sessions is when somebody comes in and they really, really don't want to be photographed. And again, a million people will say to me that they don't like having their picture taken, and I get that. It's the most common thing, really. But people come in sometimes and they put up such a high emotional barrier that I have to sort of pick my way through that before I can start to access them, if that makes sense, before I can start to understand who they are and how we can photograph them and those sorts of things. The most successful sessions have been the flip side of that. So the people who will come in and just be really keen just to get on with the session with a really sort of, it sounds a cliche, but a really sort of positive outlook towards it, ready to go, ready to trust the photographer. because like I said before, you probably arrived at this photographer for a very good reason, and so kind of ready to roll with whatever the photographer is suggesting, and you know it's great to have your own ideas about what you want from the session, and like any sort of artistry, theatre, whatever, it's a collaboration between the actor and the photographer, and when that collaboration is at its best, that's when the photographs are at their best. So that collaboration is all about having a strong idea about what you want, but then also listening to the photographer about what they think would work really well for you, and about being really committed to their direction. So if they say, do you know what I think would be a great look for you is X, Y and Z, and you hadn't have thought of that, if you put up a bit of resistance to that, it's not going to work as a look in your session. Whereas if you say, great, okay, let's try that, and be really committed to whatever's going on, that's when it starts to really come to life, and that's when it starts to really work. So, I mean, you know, we could talk for a very long time about what's going to make the most successful headshots, but I think it's really that. It's about being really open, really really committed, like I say. I think I've run out of words there. Yeah. You might have to just snip that.
No, that's all, yeah, of course,
just a little bit early, but...
yeah, no, brilliant, awesome. I'll probably actually, one last thing to be honest. What would you say, not necessarily as an actor, but as a photographer, what would you say from your experience is the one thing that a budding headshot photographer could know to make their life a little bit easier? Like what is the one thing they could know to succeed? What would say your biggest lesson that you learned of your journey?
So the thing. Well, I think first of all, so two things. So I think, well, to answer your question about what was my kind of turning point, is I think you. This is going to sound so incredibly wanky, but
the wankier the better.
Well, it's theatre after all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think you, as a photographer, you suddenly learn to see light, like the penny sort of drops, and when you kind of first start, well, I mean, I'm talking about my own experiences here. Of course, it could be different for everyone, but my experience is when you first start, you sort of don't know what you're looking for. You're in a park or wherever it is, just you know, with a mate doing, or an actor just doing some photos, and you're sort of just having a bit of a stab around in the dark and seeing what comes out. But then I remember there was a moment where I suddenly could sort of see light and see it on or it's actually, do you know what, I can phrase it even better. It's about, you see it in your head first. So it's about, that's actually a really good tip for photographers. It's about, you see the photo in your head before you take the photo, so you have a clear idea of what you want to take as a photograph, and that's true of if you're a headshot photographer or a landscape photographer, whatever, you know. See the photo first in your head, and then work out about how you go around getting that photo. And then once you start to understand light, then you'll know what you'll need in order to get that look that you want in your head. That's a very technical thing. Secondly, it's about relating to, or most importantly, it's about relating to the actor, to your client, and having that relationship with them so that you can get those really good, alive, fizzy, bubbly, engaging headshots, which is what it's all about. Headshots with communication in. That's a really, really important thing. And then as a kind of way of making a mark in, like I said, what is already a really oversaturated industry, it's about having a unique voice, having a unique quality to your photos, which people aren't really doing. And that comes from just your imagination. That comes from you. You know, it's got to be something that you like shooting, something that you feel is a really good way to photograph actors. And that can be something you just come across, something you stumble across. But it's, you know, you'll find it if it's there. You'll kind of over answering questions. Just finding a unique voice to what's out there already. That's the way to kind of stand out amongst the sea of headshot photographers which are out there already.
Yeah, and you go, that's a Robin Savage shot.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, because I mean that's a really good way to put it actually, because I can look at just because it's my industry, just because it's my business, it's what I do day to day. I can look at other headshot photographers. I can look at other headshots and pretty much have a good guess at who's taken them. As you know, I'm friends with tons of headshot photographers, and they can all do the same. They can look at them and just say, "Well, that's a Wolf Marlowe, that's a Jenny Scott, whatever." You know. That's like you say, that's finding that voice.
Awesome. So I've just seen these flyers on your desk. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the APHP.
I can indeed. Well, it's a new organisation. It's an association. It's a not for profit association, and it's a kind of benchmark of quality. So it's association for headshot photographers, and that's headshot photographers specifically for the entertainment industry. So not corporate headshot photographers, those sorts of things. But it's a mark of quality. What it means is that if somebody is approved by the APHP, it means that they're a tried and tested headshot photographer. It means that they are somebody who is experienced, somebody who isn't just kind of a bit of a flash in the pan, who's just trying to make a couple of quid out of actors because they're out of work themselves or something like that. There's entry criteria to the APHP, which is reasonably strict. So you can only really be approved by the APHP once you've kind of demonstrated that you are, like I say, a decent headshot photographer, and that you abide by sort of their codes of conduct. So you're not, there's no hidden fees. You're not sort of ripping people off. You're not just kind of just rinsing them for a couple of quid. And it's a really great thing. It's recently launched, and it's had really good feedback. It's a nice thing to look for, actually. That when if you're choosing a headshot photographer, you can actually go to the APHP website and have a look at the members. So that's a good starting place. It's a good place to know that if you book with any of the photographers on there, that you're going to be booking with an experienced headshot photographer. It's worth pointing out that I should, in the interest of fairness, I should say that there's also experienced, very good headshot photographers who aren't members. They just choose not to be members for whatever reason. But it's a safe bet. If you book with an APHP photographer, you're into a good thing straight away.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, I think you've answered any question I could ever want. That's amazing. You've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And
pleasure, James.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you very much. I'll record and film a better outro. Actually, I do have one last question. It's the title of the podcast. It's called So What Next? So it probably won't quite work, because normally we ask it for actors, and it's like, oh, so what are you doing next? But why not? As a headshot photographer, so what next?
I mean, it's going to be more of the same, James.
Yeah.
As lots of headshot photographers, I shoot 2 people a day, 4, 5, 6 days a week. So my days are reasonably routine. But the good thing about it, though, actually, is they're not routine at all, because you get someone different walking in every morning, every afternoon, and the challenge is always, how do I get the best out of this person? How do I represent this person in an image? So it's not really a case of what's next. It's more about what's fun about my job.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this week's episode of So What Next. If you'd like to know more about Robin, his links will be in the description below. Make sure you leave a like, comment about anything you want to talk about, subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.